Right, just one more thing about these public setter methods. I don't like the fact it's void. I don't like the fact that it literally just does console.writeLine as the only way that you know that it hadn't worked. So when I tried to set it to something ridiculous like 1 million for a top speed, the value stays as -1, and all I get is a little error, invalid top speed given. That's not great. The best thing to do would be to make this function so it's not a void function, so that it does actually return a result and return something that says yes, basically, if top speed was successfully set, and no if top speed wasn't successfully set. Because that way, no matter what part of the program that you're working on, a coder who doesn't even live in the same country as you could be working on the way that power-ups in a game work or something like that, and they would find that when they had a power-up that changes your top speed, that when they try to set it, they don't just have to look at the console to see if it was set to an invalid value, that actually what would happen is that method, when they tried to run set top speed, would return false, for example, and they would go, oh right, that's returned false, that hasn't worked, so do this instead. So it's quite important that we slowly get to the point in our coding where we're not just doing print statements basically to say if an error has occurred. We're actually passing a message back, passing a message up the line, so that, for example, you might say that in one situation, if the set top speed value returns false during the part of the game where you're kind of building your car in the menu system, then it will just say, oh, please choose another engine part, or please enter another value for that, in like a little graphical dialog box. At another point in the game, if you're actually racing around a track and you pick up a power-up that increases your top speed, then if you're already going at top speed, it will actually, that power-up will not work because it tried to set the top speed to +100, and it got false back, so it just did nothing. So you have a set method which returns a value, and then throughout your program you can do different things depending on the return value of that, and you're not just having some silly little console.writeLine as the only piece of communication going on that an error has occurred. Quite simply, I've already given you the gist. We make it a Boolean function, which means it must return a Boolean true or false, which it doesn't do, so that immediately is saying there's an error. Well, what we're going to need now is, after setting top speed, that's the sort of success situation, so we return false. This doesn't work, by the way. You can't do 2 lines of code after an if statement without braces. That the indentation is not being taken into account like in Python, so you must have the braces there. One opening there, one closing there. Same with else. We're going to have 2 things inside else now. Nothing wrong with keeping our console.writeLine, but we also need to return false. Sorry, this should have been returned true. We return true in the situation where the top speed was set because the if statement was satisfied, and false in the else situation. Okay, so our program won't behave any differently now. Okay, we still get the error message. We still get the top speed not being set when the value was that, but let's say being set when the value was 100. But we have the added bonus of being able to do something like this now. Okay, for example, let's say we don't want the error message in there anymore. Okay, top speed either returns true or false, does not have any error message logic in it whatsoever. Now let's say here, var result equals c1.set top speed if result equals false, then invalid top speed given. And you could then very easily, just like you've done in Python I think lots of times now, you could make it, for example, have a while loop around that saying as long as result is false, keep asking the user to input something to try and set the top speed to that, and as soon as result becomes true, then you know that set top speed has worked and you can move on. Okay, so this should give us the exact same behavior as before actually. no error message. Okay, now let's say try to set the top speed. Remember 300 or something was the biggest number, so if we set it to 1000, we should get result coming back from set top speed returning false, so we should be getting that error message. We do. That's good. That means that we're not relying on that means that the function to set top speed within the class is more pure. It just does what it's asked to do and communicates back the result of it trying to do what you've asked it to do with the parameters you gave it. And it's up to someone else, somewhere else in the program, who's maybe more about designing the user interface side of things, to decide whether they're going to use console or WriteLine, to decide whether they're going to have a dialog box pop up, to decide what happens when the result comes back false. Okay, so I'm just going to do that really quickly with the set model one as well. Brackets have got really messed up here. Ugh, ugly. Thank you, autocorrect in Rider, for completely messing with what I was trying to do. Wow, it's really messed it up for me. It's not always helpful, their sort of automatic indentation and tabbing and stuff. So again, it's a simple if that returns true with the else that returns false. The method itself is a Boolean type, and then when I do the set model, we could probably just reuse result now. This is more powerful. It might not look, you might not think that it's as well abstracted. You might like the fact that the error message is given within there, which is actually perfectly fine. You could have the error message given in the else brackets there, but you're still going to be doing something like this elsewhere in your code. You're still going to be testing the result of that function and doing other stuff. Okay, so this is technically closer to where you want to end up with the handling of errors being separate from where the errors are actually caused. Okay, so you communicate back from set model, you communicate back from set top speed using the true false return value, and then respond to the result of trying to run that function here. Also, just a couple of other ways that you could do this. You could say if not result. Should give us the exact same thing. Let's run it first. We won't see a problem because H is a valid set model. But let's give it nothing. Invalid model given. Must not be left empty. Okay, so that there is because result on its own. If you just said if result, that is sort of shorthand for saying if result double equals true. So then saying if not result is shorthand for saying if result double equals false. And some people even like to call their variables things which communicate that even more, like var OK equals c1.set.speed if not OK. I quite like that one. If not OK. Because that, as a programmer, that reads quite nicely. If it's okay, if it's not okay, then do this. You know, that actually logically it sort of rolls off the tongue as you read it. All right, so that there was changing our set methods, our setters, our mutator methods to having Boolean return results, so that we can communicate the success or not of that method running to other parts of the program, like the main, which is where we're now responding to that result.